My name is Rachel Monroe, I'm 27, and until last month, I thought I finally had my life together. I worked hard for years, waitressing double shifts, freelancing on weekends, just to save enough for my own apartment. That little one-bedroom place wasn't fancy, but it was mine. My sanctuary. My safe corner of the world where I could finally breathe. But everything changed the night I unlocked my front door after a work trip. The second I stepped inside, my chest tightened. My apartment looked like a war zone. Empty beer cans littered the counter, pizza boxes were stacked on the couch, and my favorite framed photo, the one of me and my dog growing up, was shattered on the floor. My heart sank when I saw the ripped couch cushion and a massive hole punched in the drywall. This wasn't a break-in. This was personal. That's when I heard it. His voice. "Hey, you're back," my older brother Jake Monroe said casually from my kitchen, as if he hadn't just turned my home into a disaster zone. I couldn't even speak. My throat felt tight as I tried to process the scene. Then he had the audacity to lean against the counter, smirking, and say, "You know, you still owe me rent. I've been staying here all week." Something in me snapped right then. After everything I had sacrificed, after all the chances I had given him, this was the final straw. I knew in that moment, I couldn't keep living like this. Something had to change. Growing up in the Monroe household always felt like living in someone else's shadow, Jake's shadow to be exact. Our parents, Linda and Charles, always seemed to think Jake could do no wrong. If he got into trouble at school, Mom would sigh and say, "He's just figuring things out. Boys will be boys." When I got an A- on a math test, she'd ask why it wasn't an A+. I still remember being 12 years old, staying up late to finish a science project. Jake had forgotten about his until the night before it was due. Mom rushed to the store, bought supplies, and practically built it for him while I watched in disbelief. When I asked for help with mine, she told me to be responsible and manage my time better. Dad wasn't much better. He worked long hours and came home tired, so he avoided conflict. If Jake took my stuff without asking, my headphones, my favorite hoodie, even my allowance, Dad would just say, "Let it go, Rachel. He's your brother." By the time we were teenagers, I had learned to pick up after him, to cover for him, to clean the messes he left behind. When Jake wrecked the family car at 17, I was the one who helped smooth things over with our parents, begging them not to ground him so he wouldn't miss prom. I guess I thought if I kept being the good daughter, they'd notice me. That maybe one day, they'd be proud of me for holding everything together. But deep down, I think I always knew. Jake was the golden child, and I was just expected to hold the line. So when I finally moved out at 24, it wasn't just about independence, it was about freedom. My little apartment became the first place that truly felt like mine. No Jake barging in, no parents telling me to forgive him, no one taking my space for granted. Which is why walking into that trashed apartment felt like being dragged straight back into my childhood all over again. After I moved out, I promised myself I'd keep healthy boundaries. But with Jake, boundaries always felt like suggestions he could ignore. At first, it was small things. He'd call me late at night, saying he needed to crash on my couch, just for a night. I didn't want to be cruel, so I let him. One night turned into 3. 3 turned into a week. I told myself he was struggling, that he just needed time to get on his feet. But every time I walked through the door after work, the apartment looked worse. Dirty dishes in the sink, laundry scattered across the floor, my food gone. I'd work 12-hour days, come home exhausted, and instead of resting, I'd spend hours cleaning up his mess. I paid the full rent, utilities, internet, everything. Jake never offered a dime. In fact, he acted like he was doing me a favor by keeping me company. I even lent him money once, $500 I had been saving for my car insurance. He promised to pay it back next month. It's been over a year, and I still haven't seen a cent. But the worst part wasn't the money or the mess, it was the way he made me feel in my own home. If I asked him to clean up, he'd roll his eyes and call me uptight. If I reminded him it was my apartment, he'd say, "Relax, we're family. You should be glad I'm around. I started losing sleep. My chest felt tight every time I came home, afraid of what new chaos I'd find. My friends would invite me out, and I'd decline because I didn't want to leave him alone in my apartment. I kept hoping things would get better, that he'd get a job, find his own place, grow up. I kept forgiving, kept compromising, kept trying to keep the peace. But that day when I walked into the trash department after my trip, I realized something. No matter how much I gave, it would never be enough for Jake. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I wanted to keep forgiving him. The day everything truly snapped is burned into my memory. I had been out of town for 3 days for a work training session. Before leaving, I texted Jake, asking him to stay somewhere else while I was gone. He didn't reply, and honestly, I thought he'd finally respected my request. But when I walked into my apartment, my heart sank. Beer bottles were everywhere. My couch cushion was ripped wide open, stuffing spilling out like snow. My favorite lamp was shattered, my fridge was almost completely empty, and my landlord had slipped a warning notice under the door because of noise complaints. And there was Jake, standing in the kitchen eating cereal out of my mixing bowl, completely unfazed. What happened here? I shouted, my voice cracking. He just shrugged. Relax, Ratch. We had a few friends over. It's not that big a deal. I could feel my blood boiling. Not that big a deal? Jake, you destroyed my apartment. You could get me evicted. And then he said it, the words that broke me. You still owe me rent, by the way. I've been here all week. I laughed. Not the kind of laugh that's funny. The kind that's hollow, shaking, on the edge of tears. I owe you rent. This is my apartment, Jake. You don't pay a single bill here. He rolled his eyes and muttered, You're so dramatic. No wonder nobody likes living with you. That was it. I grabbed my overnight bag, shoved a few clothes inside, and walked out. No yelling, no slamming doors, just silence. But as I locked the door behind me, I knew something inside me had shifted forever. I spent that night at a cheap motel on the edge of town. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, replaying every fight, every excuse, every time I'd been told to let it go because Jake was family. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I called my landlord and explained everything. The damages, the complaints, the fact that my brother had been living there without my permission. She was sympathetic but blunt. If I wanted to avoid eviction, I'd need to move out before the lease was terminated. So I did. I spent the next 2 weeks boxing up my life, one painful item at a time. I sold what I could, donated the rest. The couch was beyond saving, the lamp too shattered to fix. Jake texted me once during that time. So you're just abandoning me? Real nice, Ratch. I didn't reply. When moving day came, I felt both sick and strangely free. I loaded everything into a rental truck by myself and drove 3 hours away to a small town I had never lived in before. I rented a tiny studio apartment. Nothing fancy, but it was clean, quiet, and mine. For the first time in months, I didn't have to worry about someone barging in or leaving beer cans on the counter. Starting over wasn't easy. I picked up a job as a receptionist at a local community center and spent my evenings walking through my new neighborhood, learning every street, every corner store. The first night in my new place, I sat on the floor surrounded by unopened boxes, listening to the silence. No yelling, no thumping music, no slamming doors, just silence. I cried, not out of sadness, but out of relief. Little by little, I rebuilt. I bought a second-hand couch, painted the walls a color I loved, made friends with my neighbor, Sophie, who brought me cookies on my second weekend there. Slowly, my chest stopped feeling tight. Slowly, I started to breathe again. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was living in a place where I actually belonged. It didn't take long for my family to notice I was gone. 2 weeks after I moved, my mom called me, 3 times in one day. When I finally answered, her voice was sharp. Rachel, how could you do this to your brother? He told us you just threw him out on the street. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone. Mom, he destroyed my apartment. He didn't pay rent. He put my lease in jeopardy. Still, she said, he's your brother. Family sticks together. Those words used to make me cave. But this time, I stayed silent. A few days later, my dad texted me. Your mom isn't feeling well. Maybe you should call her. It was the oldest trick in the book. Guilt. When I finally spoke to Mom, she admitted she was fine. I just wish you'd come home. Jake misses you. That made me laugh bitterly. He misses free rent. There's a difference. Even Jake tried to reach out. One night, I got a message from him. Hey. Sorry about the apartment. You know I was just blowing off steam. Can I crash with you for a few days? For the first time ever, I didn't hesitate. No, Jake. You can't. I blocked his number after that. My parents weren't happy. They accused me of being selfish, of turning my back on family. But something had changed in me. Every time they tried to pull me back into that old cycle, I remembered the quiet peace of my little studio apartment, the way my hands no longer shook when I unlocked my own door. I wasn't going back. Not this time. It's been 6 months since I last spoke to Jake. 6 months since I packed up my life, walked away, and chose myself for the very first time. My little studio is still simple, a thrifted couch, a few plants by the window, my favorite mug on the counter, but it feels like a palace to me. Every time I walk in, I feel safe. And you know what? I don't miss the chaos. For years, I thought being a good daughter and a good sister meant sacrificing my peace, cleaning up messes, forgiving things that were never really forgivable. But now I see it clearly. That wasn't love. That was survival. Love doesn't demand you destroy yourself to keep someone else comfortable. My parents still call sometimes. I answer when I want to. We keep it polite, short. They know my boundaries now. Jake. I don't know where he is. And honestly, I hope he figures himself out. But whether he does or doesn't, that's no longer my responsibility. I've learned that choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. And if anyone out there is listening to my story, if you feel trapped, unheard, taken for granted, let me tell you this. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to start over. You are allowed to choose peace, even if it means disappointing the people who always expected you to keep forgiving them. Because family isn't just the people who share your blood. Family is the people who respect your heart, your space, and your boundaries. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is close the door and never look back.